We are switching over now. I'm looking at my audio levels. I'm coming through. Hopefully stuff is coming through okay. I think you might be able to hear a little bit of music in the background. It should be pretty low, but maybe you can hear it. Let me know if I need to turn it up. But what is up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode, another stream of Learning Quick. And I love to bring on other people who are doing cool things, have things for me to learn from, and then potentially like learn together and just kind of discuss with people that are here in the chat. So we got a lot of people in here already, and I am really excited to have you, Drew, on to talk about your project and lots of things around it, protege.dev. So you want to tell everyone here a little bit about yourself, maybe your background, and we'll dive into like all the details in a few minutes.
Yeah. So I'm Drew Clements. I'm a perpetually junior developer.
There you go. We talked about that beforehand.
Yeah. I work as a front end engineer with Foster Commerce. We use Vue and Craft CMS to build e-commerce solutions, and then for fun, I build the Protege job board.
Nice. You know, like I wanted to share this with you, and I haven't told you this until now. Is I asked you if you considered yourself a junior developer. I think that's on your Twitter is where I saw it. And I was really surprised to see that because I look at protege.dev and I'm like, that's a badass site. And I feel like I'm a relatively senior developer. And as I told you earlier, like I have lots of ideas and I've started little mini projects and I've never gotten anything to the point where I felt like it was really done and where I wanted it to be. And it's never looked this good. So whatever has gotten you to this point, like just looking at what's here, I feel like you should be pretty proud of, especially if you consider yourself a junior developer.
Well, thank you very much. I definitely got to give a lot of that goes to my co-founder Andy. He came in early on and took it a whole lot further than where I had it.
Yeah. That's kind of my perspective too. Like and almost in a lot of the things I do, I can do some design stuff. I can do a little bit of marketing stuff, but I really need that other person to take the things that I can do, like my skill set, complement it, and really have like that next level of product. So yeah, I totally get that too. And again, like I consider myself to be a senior developer, but there's like obvious gaps of things that I would need help with.
Yeah.
Again, hello to everyone.
We're all smoke and mirrors over here.
Yeah. You'll find out what it's like behind the scenes. Again, hello to everybody in the chat. Thanks for being here and hanging out. I would say go ahead and queue up your questions. I think, Drew, I want to start with just like get into the idea of what protege.dev is, what was the inspiration, and GM Will, who asked a question in the chat for the URL. There's the URL for the website. Go check it out. It looks badass. It looks awesome. And yeah, if you want to just start by giving us a little bit of background of the idea and the project and that sort of stuff.
Okay. Well, the original idea of what Protege was going to be. So before I had Protege, I had this other side project. It had a really bad name, and I was going to rebrand it under Protege.
Okay.
The idea of that project was that it was still a place where seniors and juniors could it was still going to be a platform to help people new into the industry. Like I said, it had a really bad name. I was going to rebrand it, and then around that time, at the beginning of COVID, I was working full time as a designer, and then I had a contract gig doing some front end development, and I lost both of those. I want to say within the same week of each other.
Oh wow. Yeah.
You know, for reasons that were, you know, out of my hands and even out of the company's hands, who let me go. But at that point, I was like, you know, I have this URL. I think it's a really good URL. I think there's a lot of stuff that could be done with it. So I didn't have a job. I needed something to work on or something to fill my time on. I figured, you know, I have all this newfound time. I can really dig in and try to take my skill set as far as possible, but then maybe also build something that can get me hired, or build something where someone could list a job and then I can apply to that job and then I can get hired. So it really started out of necessity. And like we were talking before this stream, I would look through job boards and I would see senior, or principal or lead, you know, all of those words that make me feel like I shouldn't even bother trying to apply. So, and I looked around and I didn't really see. I saw there were some products out there that were helping juniors get jobs, but there wasn't ever really one specifically for remote opportunities for junior developers.
Yeah.
Um,
And that goes
so
into like just the
mm,
idea of having a product. Like there are other similar products, but to
mm,
have one successful, you either have to like do something new and different, which is not that common. Like not many people have something brand new. Usually they have like some sort of niche or some sort of like small thing that they do better than the other things that already exist. And this was your like specific thing that you were looking for that then becomes useful for other people that are looking for similar stuff.
yeah, and there were some other companies we looked at how they were doing it, and again, we just didn't find anything that was just a job board for junior remote opportunities. So
Yeah.
it seemed like it was a simple enough concept that it would be within my wheelhouse that I could build, or at least get close to building. So I streamed a lot of it when I first got started off. So I just fired up the stream and went to work.
Yeah, I was going to mention that too. I'm going to grab your Twitch and throw it in the chat too for people who are interested. Is Nikki T online? Is that the co-founder?
Uh, no, he's not the co-founder. He is part of the Protege team. That's
Oh, cool.
Nick Taylor.
Okay, sweet.
Um, he's part of the Dev.2 crew. He
Oh,
came
cool.
on. So the co-founder is Andy Pickle. I don't know if he's hanging out with us yet. He's
Hmm.
he works full time. This is a side project for all of us. So he
Yeah,
works full time as a project manager. Um,
cool.
and I work full time as a front end developer. But yeah, we so yeah, like Nikki T online said in chat, it is open source. We do have some issues open. We try to keep issues in there. One of the things we wanted to do with it was we didn't want to just be a job board. We wanted to try to find a way to kind of champion the candidates we're trying to get hired at the same time. We haven't exactly figured out what that looks like yet, but one of the ways we're trying to do that is to give them the opportunity to work on the platform that companies are posting
Yeah,
from. So there,
and then
we,
have
we
that
try
on
to
their
keep
resume
issues in
too.
there. Yeah,
Yeah,
and you can even go if you do protege.dev/contributors. You can see a list of anyone. There's a list of anyone who's committed to the project, how many commits they've done.
yeah, that's super cool.
So
Oh, okay, Nick
yeah,
Taylor. So yeah, Nick, I recognize your picture when I'm on here from Twitter. So hi, I don't think we've ever met or like directly talked to each other, but what's going on? Super cool. So I put your Twitch link in here if anybody wants to follow. I know you're not streaming as much anymore, but if you
mm,
happen to, people can check it out. And you've got a question in here from SOS. I'm gonna take a stab at it, and then I want to hear your perspective too. So the question is, would you consider someone a junior dev in quotes if they're moving into something new, like trying to become a React dev when they were formerly an Ember dev, basically sort of starting over by transitioning? How to bridge the experience gap? No, not like I would not at all consider you a junior developer at all, like hands down, very adamantly no. One of the things that I've learned in working in different frameworks, front end, back end, languages, is all these things do the same thing. Like nothing is that unique, nothing is that different. They're all trying to accomplish similar goals. Really, it's just syntax. So to me, if you show that like as a not junior dev or as a senior dev that you understand the concepts of how things fit together, it doesn't matter what framework we're using. So even though you're learning React, yeah, you're going to have some learning, but you've been a developer. So no, I don't at all consider you to be a junior developer. Do you have any thoughts or perspective or opinion on that?
I would largely agree. If you understand the basic concepts of what everything Ember's doing, or even another language, then I wouldn't consider yourself a junior. My first developer role was actually working with Cold Fusion,
Yeah.
um, which is an older framework that a lot the syntax is very different from a lot of what you see now, but still the idea of components and how some of the stuff is structured there, I was able to translate when I started working with Vue and React.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. I mean, like I said, nothing is that different. And I go back to this example a lot. Like if you look at cars across the board, like Nissan, Chevy, Ford, Toyota, what like name a brand, every upgrade of like body style is almost the exact same upgrade across the board. Like they all look they progress together. Nothing in the world is that unique. And that especially holds true in my perspective for frameworks and
Mm.
languages. Like if just understand the concepts and then bring that with you. I also like, and this is kind of goes back to me being surprised that you had Junior on your Twitter was I think people are a little too quick to consider themselves junior developers. Like, I almost recommend for a lot of people just like take that off. Like you don't, you're a developer at this point, and your experience may not be as much as other people, maybe. But I personally, like,
Mm.
I wouldn't. I think a lot of people undersell themselves and they say, "Oh, I just built this or I just know this," but that's still skills. And for me, like I look at protege.dev, I would love to have that thing on my resume right now and be like, "Yeah, I helped build that thing." So anyway, that's my like words of encouragement for people that consider themselves junior developers, and maybe you just move past it and now you're just a developer at some point.
Yeah, I think some of it may come back to the imposter syndrome
Hmm.
conversation that always happens. Like
Yeah,
I've had people tell me that they don't think I'm as junior as I let myself on to be, but
yeah,
I know how confident I am, and I know my confidence level in what I'm doing, and in that regard, I still feel like I'm a junior developer.
yeah. I mean, again, like I have the same feedback for you too. The site looks badass. I don't know how it works because I haven't like signed up and or anything like that, but it looks
Mm.
great. So I think you at least have that to be super proud of. I'm curious. So lots of people in the chat. Great. I see Debs O'Brien. Is this Debbie O'Brien from Nuxt, who I think is going to I'm putting you on the spot here, is going to start streaming sometime soon. She's been thinking about it. So everybody give her like a thumbs up if you think she should be streaming on some badass Vue and Next stuff. Assuming that's the right Debs
You
O'Brien, which I
should
think it
definitely
is.
do that.
Yeah. I would love to see it. She joined me for one of these a couple of months ago and we had a blast. Um, yes, it is. So everybody give a thumbs up in the chat to say that Debbie should be streaming. So another question coming in a little bit further back in the chat. How much time do you feel entry devs should devote to an example portfolio projects while looking for work? If you want to take this one, I'll add some stuff on if I have anything after you.
Yeah. Um, so how much time entry dev should devote to example projects while looking for work? I would I would say as much as you can without throwing your work life balance off.
Yeah.
So I spent a lot of time working on Protege because I spent a few months completely unemployed. So I had that. I mean I had that luxury.
Hmm.
I guess I was out of work, so maybe not a luxury, but
But I mean, like,
I had the window nonetheless.
yeah, and you were able, like, as tough as that is, you took that as an opportunity to build your skill set. By the way, we got to
Mm.
subscribe from IR Geek. Thank you so much for being here. Appreciate it. And so, for subscribing.
Yeah, I
Um,
would say what I did when I was still when I was still employed and trying to put together side projects, I would try to do at least maybe 2 to 3 hours a week on it. I think that's enough time to where you could, move it enough forward where it feels like progress, but it's not so much time that you're like, okay, I got to cut out this, or I got to stay up this late, or wake up this early. Um, so yeah, I would say 2 to 3 hours a week. I mean, that's obviously, depending on your situation, but
yeah.
I think that's a minimum enough amount to where you can still get a good chunk of stuff done.
Absolutely. And I think for me, like the time is not necessarily the most important part. I think you want to get to the point where you have stuff on your portfolio that you're proud of. And what you're proud of is relative based on your experience. Like this doesn't have, you don't have to have protege.dev. Again, this is like a fully functioning, I want to talk about all the tech here in a minute, but you got a
Mhm.
legit, this is a legit thing, right? Like you don't, for people out there on your portfolio, you don't have to have that. You have to have something that
Mhm.
you can share and talk about in interviews to show that you know what you're talking about and you've learned things yourself, especially with this is less important and this is just kind of how it is. If you have a traditional degree, it's going to be easier to get a job. And I have a traditional degree, and I can tell you, I didn't learn near as much as I should have with my degree. And people that are self-taught and go through boot camps, I feel like are a lot more prepared for jobs. But you have to kind of prove it a little bit more, and that comes through your portfolio. So whatever time that takes to have a couple of things that you're proud of that you can show off and you can talk about in interviews, I think can vary for people. But that would be my goal. And then after that, like if you have more time, you continue to learn, continue to build stuff. Maybe you have a product idea, maybe you don't, but you should continue to be learning and pushing yourself to make sure that you're in the best spot possible when you get interviews, when you start a new job, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and protege.dev was originally not even. I always had the idea that maybe it could be a product, but at first it was just purely going to be a portfolio buffer. Because I had some Vue experience. I didn't have as much React experience, but I personally have seen way more React jobs than Vue jobs for on the
Hmm.
boards that I was looking through.
Yep.
So I said, let me I'm gonna build this in React so I can show that I know the fundamentals
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So it was originally not even going to be a product. It was just going to be something I could put on my portfolio.
Hmm.
It was basically going to be a form that wrote to a Firebase uh, data store, and that was it.
So
Um,
I'm gonna stop you again. And this
uh-huh.
is, you said it's just a, but that's still like I don't give a shit what you use to do it, right? Like you still did it. That's still a
Mhm.
product. Like that's still an amazing thing
Yeah,
that you built. So hopefully for people out there,
true.
maybe you start to pay attention, and I do it too. I just, or it's just like pay attention when you say those things, and maybe give yourself a little bit more credit of like that's still quite an accomplishment. It may be different from other people's accomplishments, but it's all relative to where you are in your experience.
Yeah, but the Andy, the co-founder, coming on is what really kicked it up into to full product mode
Yeah.
because he found it on Twitter. I'd posted on Twitter that I have this domain name. I have this free time. I'm going to see if I can build anything with it. And um, he just replied to the tweet. He's like, "Hey, I've had similar ideas. I think this is awesome. I want to build it with you." So I shot him an invite to the repo and I said, "Hey, this is where I'm at. This is kind of what I'm doing." And I think at that point I didn't even really have the post to job form part done.
Mm.
I just kind of designed it and started putting the homepage together. And within like 2 or 3 days, he pushed a commit that was like the entire post to job form flow. And I was like, all right, well, this guy's full send. Let's go.
Yeah. And then now you're a team. That's cool.
Yeah.
A couple of extra comments because I'm kind of falling behind. Thank you everybody for being so active. One, going back to the idea of considering yourself maybe a junior developer when you're switching, is
Mhm.
SOS had lots of feedback of saying we just need someone who already has React experience. That's fine, and I'm sure that happens, and that kind of sucks.
Mhm.
Employers should be more open. Like I get everyone's always trying to hit the ground running and someone to start and like contribute immediately. Like you could take 3 weeks and study your ass off on the job for Vue or React or whatever you need to learn, and then you're ready to contribute. Like some employers have a hard time wrapping their mind around growing people and giving them the opportunities and resources to grow. So that sucks that you've seen that. I think you could help maybe make your pitch to say, I'm confident in my skills. I am confident I can translate those. Give me a couple weeks. I'll be off the ground and running. The other thing you can do is do like take a project in React and put that on your resume and use that as a learning experience if you're seeing that feedback multiple times.
Yeah, because a lot of times they're not looking for your ability to build a full scale app with anything, but if you
Mhm.
can just show that you know like the core
Yeah,
concepts or some of the core fundamentals, like that's I know we haven't jumped into the tech yet, but we built Protege with Create React app. And we decided to not go with Nux or Next or Gatsby or anything like that because uh, I wanted to force myself to have to learn some of that lower level plumbing of how React worked.
sure.
So if I did end up in an interview for it, I
Yeah,
could point to this as an example.
that's a great point. So a couple of things that stand out to me there. I just did a video recently on Create React App versus Next versus Gatsby. And one of the things I said was if you're starting, use Create React App. One, because that's what all the beginner tutorials are most likely going to use. And you
Hmm.
learn a little bit more behind the scenes. Um, a comment from IR Geek, which IR Geek, let me know who you are because they mentioned that this is a great resource for the Code School students, which Code School is a programming boot camp here in Memphis that I'm a big fan
Hmm.
of. I've at least talked to a lot of their students over the past year and a half or so. So if you're one of the instructors, that's great. Welcome. Thanks for being here. And definitely send them to Protege. Also, a couple of questions. Do you have part-time jobs on Protege? And I think another one was about international. Are there international opportunities, or are these all U.S. based?
We do allow international. It largely comes down to what's on there. That also goes for part time. There's full time contract and part time. I think right now the majority of the stuff on there is full time. But the answer to both those questions is we allow all of it.
Okay,
It just
great.
depends on who comes in and post.
Yeah. By the way, we've gotten several follows over the course of the stream, so thank you everyone who's hanging out and following. I appreciate that. Question from Brad Garapy, a friend of mine, and he's part of the Discord group, which we'd love to. I know you, I had you join so that we could do the stream. I'd love for you to stick around, and I think it'd be great for people to like have your perspective on your learning and what you're building and stuff. So hopefully you do. But regardless of
Mhm.
that, from Brad, how did you partner with companies to add jobs, or did you just put up a site and they came to you? I assume, and I think maybe you can kind of tie into like your next generation or effort in marketing of really trying to bring
Mhm.
these things in now, which I think is kind of what you're starting to get to.
Yeah. So right now, the majority of the postings on there, we've kind of been dog feeding it, dog feeding it, whatever the term
Dog
is,
fooding it, yeah. That's a
dog
weird ass
fooding it.
phrase.
Yeah, we've largely been feeding the site ourselves. So I spend a couple hours a week looking through some different job boards, and we have this process of approving it internally. So like I'll find a job board, I'll kick it over to Andy or Nick, and they'll look through it and make sure there's no, we've had a couple incidents where 3 years experience required has slipped through the cracks.
Okay.
But we try to keep those off of the site. We try to keep
Mm-hmm.
we try to keep it to true one to
Inch.
2 years experience.
Okay.
But the answer to Brad's question is, so right now it's largely just us finding them and putting them on there ourselves. We have had a few companies post. We're just now getting to a point where we're going to start ramping up some of the marketing and reaching out to companies for partnerships.
Cool.
Um, yeah, so right now, a lot of the listings you see on there, I've personally just scoured the internet and posted them myself.
Yeah. Okay. And that's the kind of thing, like that's the big growth opportunities. Like once you get companies that are signing up, they're posting that stuff themselves. At that
Mm.
point, are you still doing like a manual look at the stuff that they might like if a company signs up and they're going to post a job, do you do a manual review to make sure that it still meets like the requirements that you feel like need to be there?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
All of the listings on Protege, as long as it's within reason, will always have to get approved by me or someone else on the team. Um, we've talked about maybe trying to automate some of that in the future, but for right now, they're all going to get looked at by one of the three team members before it's approved.
Okay, cool. I actually had a conversation on the Auth0 stream yesterday about this app that I'm working on called Dev, which is where developers can come and just upload an image of their desk setups. And
Hmm.
I wanted to make sure that they are actual desks and not just spam stuff that people are putting up. So I was working through what I thought would be the best way to have an approval process, whether I could automate it or have a manual piece. And I think for now, I'm going to stick with some sort of manual piece, and then maybe later
Mm.
on try to use like Google Vision and have it automatically tag for like desk or laptop or something like that. Um,
Yeah. The last big feature we just put together was um what was an admin dashboard. So it made it a little bit easier for us. We can see which ones need to be. We can see new ones. We can see old ones, and it's easy to just click in, read through, and approve.
yeah, sweet. We've got a question from Lawrence, which is one Syrian. And by the way, Will Johnson just subscribed. Thanks, Will. Shout out to Will. Will, if you want to grab your link to Break Into Tech Twitter ebook, talking about this next question of digital products, throw that in the chat because everybody else should go and check it out. I've read through it, and it's helped me kind of get an idea of how I structure the stuff, consistency wise, and things I post about on Twitter, and it's been super helpful. So throw a link to that in the chat, and then people go and check it out. One Syrian Lawrence is asking about the difference between a little side project and a professional one. Is it just the pay button? For me, no. Like a side project doesn't mean free. Like this is a side project for you, but this is also like a real product, and you really are gonna make money from it. That's the plan for me. For you is that you blow up and you get a lot of money. But like
Yeah.
no, I don't. I don't think of like plenty of people make money off of their side projects. Like all of my courses and my ebook that I'm working on are all side projects, and I plan to make money on those. So I like for me, no, that's not the differentiator there. I think it's just how dedicated are you and what scale are you looking to push it to, and how much time do you have to dedicate to it, I guess.
Yeah. I would agree with that.
SOS, is there a ceiling for dev projects that dev projects should stay under? Or should you go full steam ahead and build something massive, very technical, even if you don't finish it before applying places? My biggest piece of advice: find an MVP, find the minimal viable product, your minimum features, finish that, and then add on. If you get to the point where you're in an interview or in your resume and you have something that's not finished, at least not finished up to a certain point, I would, that's not as impactful as having a smaller amount done, but it's finished at that point and you can add on more later. So always like bring back your, rein it in and try to get your MVP and finish that, is my perspective.
Yeah, the what 1.0 of Protege was it was a form that wrote to Firebase. There were no notifications to let us know when it happened. There was no admin dashboard. Um, and there really wasn't any way to approve it outside of finding the listing in the Firebase
And like
in the Firebase
GUI,
dashboard.
yeah, and go on and update a flag or something. Yeah,
Yep, and that's pretty much all it was. There were no payments. There was
yeah,
like I said, there was nothing. It was a form that wrote to the dashboard, and then it was on us to check daily or weekly to see if there was anything new there.
yep. And that's, I think that's a good point too. Like talking about how much time or how technical should a project be. Like if you have this working app, nobody, I'm not going to be like, oh, are you manually approving stuff and you don't have automation around it? No, like you still have a working product. You've got features that you can add, but that product is working, and at the end of the day, that is what matters.
Mm-hmm.
Comment in here, I think building something you're excited about is more important than how technical complicated it is. I agree. For one big reason, if you're excited about something, you'll be willing to spend more time on it, and you won't feel like you're having to force yourself to do it. So I always say, like, find something that you're passionate about. First thing I ever built was a Harry Potter trivia app, and that is what I talked about in 90% of my interviews at Microsoft and other tech companies, because I was passionate about it, and like I was spending time at night writing that code because I wanted to do it and I enjoyed it. So
Yeah, the first, or not the first thing I built, the last thing I built right before I started on Protege. I just posted in the chat. It was this little the URL is fnff.app.com. It's Fast and Furious. I'm a huge Fast and Furious fan.
cool.
So all I did was I built an API that reads a JSON file and just gives you a whole bunch of Fast and Furious data, and
Yeah.
then I built a Gatsby front end to just display it.
So again, here's your phrase, all I built. That's badass. That's perfect. Like that's exactly the kind of thing that is super powerful on your resume. And I think like not only are you showing that you have experience with React, at least to build that, you have experience of like how to build an API. That's not especially for new, like I didn't know that. All the stuff that you just built, I had no idea how to do any of it when I came out of college. So I went through a 4-year degree, which I loved. I didn't have any of that experience that you're talking about. So it's all relative, but I think that's pretty powerful. And just for your ability to potentially have a conversation to explain what the difference is between Gatsby and React and Next, if you can do that, that's pretty powerful too, because you understand the ecosystem and what's out there.
Yeah, and this thing doesn't even work half the time. You have to go to the URL and then refresh like 7 times before it'll work. I guess there's something on Heroku. The API is on Heroku, so I guess it has
Okay.
to like wake up or something.
Yeah, that's funny.
I never got that far into it.
Okay. And that's like, you don't have to bring that part up either. I'm curious. So IR Geek is from Code Crew. There's 2 instructors, and I apologize, or at least there were 2 instructors. I can't remember their names, so let me know which one you are in the chat. Scroll on down. This is great, by the way. Lots of questions. This is good. Just created a Twitch account so I could post my question about international opportunities. Now following James on Twitch. Great. Yay. I just saw the job site. It looks good. Oh, someone else commented, I think it was Ash, that they were going to go and apply for a few of these jobs. And I think G and Will said they were going to look there as well. So you've got some people that are at least checking it out, which is great. Will posted his break into tech.dev book. Thanks. That thing is awesome. Definitely go check it out. Aaron, who is GM Whitlock, or GW, or G Whitlock, is working at FedEx, which is where I used to work, went through my boot camp, and is working on some extra side projects to build up his web development skills. So that's great too. Are you paying attention to, have you picked out any questions? There's a lot of comments, which is great.
Yeah. So Deborah was asking how helpful or impactful is contributing to open source projects and applying for entry-level junior dev jobs. I don't have any direct experience with this, because I'd never contributed to open source before applying, but I would like to say that it would be, um, I mean, moderately or significantly helpful because they can see not only can you jump into a code base that you're not familiar with, but that you also know how to work in whatever languages that code base is using at the same time.
Yeah, and I would say the PR itself makes a big difference. Like if you do a grammatical or a documentation change, those are still really handy, and knowing how to
Mm,
do that is a great skill. But it is still different than like contributing some sort of code feature. So if I were
yeah.
really looking into this, I would look at like what your PRs were, and then I would really in a good way, hopefully, like press you in an interview. Like if you make it to an interview, I want you to tell me like what exactly you did, and now I'm gonna fall into it. If it's just a documentation change, be honest about that. You don't have to like oversell it. Like that's still great. But I want to know
Mm,
what are the details of the things that you added and what your understanding is of the application. Because if you can tell me like the back end is written in Node, the front end is with React, and we use so and so and so and so. That's the kind of understanding that I want to see someone have. You don't have to as an entry level developer, but that's a game changer if you do, where you can kind of explain the whole thing together about how things work.
mm. I'm loving all these Fast and Furious code conversion, granny code, not double quoting like you should.
You could push it
Oh,
across the
that's
finish
great.
line or tow it. I like it.
There was another one. What it say? It's not how you stand by your code. It's how you write your code. You better learn that.
Love it. From IR Geek, from Code School. So this is Kevin. What's up, Kevin? And teaching with Ken. Got it. Now we have an equally talented. Oh, Autumn is. I didn't know Autumn was doing. I know she was like a TA maybe, and then I didn't know she was a full time teacher. That's great. I didn't know that. Comment from TK Shillings. Hey, documentation can be really important too, especially if it's a guide as a resource. Absolutely. Yeah. And I wanted to be, and if I need to go back and like even over clarify that, I don't think that, I think that is a super valuable thing. The only difference I'm trying to make up is that doesn't necessarily reflect technical skills. And what I mean is, if you contribute by creating a new page or by creating a new piece of functionality, I can now talk to you about that. You contributing for documentation is still a great thing because, again, I had no idea how to do a PR. I had no idea what Git or GitHub was when I came out of college. So, again, I still think it's super valuable. It's just a little bit different on how I would approach that in conversation with you during an interview, if that makes sense. And then Faraday's adding to this too. Documentation PRs are so good. I've done my fair share of these too. So again, they are absolutely necessary, especially like when documentation is the first thing that people will look for. And if it's not good, people are going to be really turned off by a product immediately, and you don't want that to happen. So
Yeah, that's one part that Protege probably needs improvement in is our documentation. There's some, but it's probably not as good as it could be. That's largely because when I first started putting it together, my documentation was minimal because it was just me working on it, and it kind of snowballed into having more hands on it than the documentation was set up to account for
mhm. Well, I can
before I
tell
could get
you.
a good handle on it.
Okay. And I can tell you from my perspective, I've looked at lots of documentation, and it's one of the most frustrating things for me if like you show the most basic example in documentation and it's like, all right, I want to do
Mm.
something slightly different. There's no help there. Like that kills me. And it's like, what, like there should be documentation around like what exactly I can do here, not just the hello world example.
Yeah,
Nikki
that's we
T,
we do have
go ahead.
while we were talking about uh, open source and contributing some, we are going to have some stuff open, some issues open for Hacktoberfest.
Perfect.
And one of the things I try to do when I'm creating a PR, and the other guys do too, is we have this template, so you kind of get a reason, or you get an idea for what the PR should accomplish. You get um, actually here, let me just pull it up real quick.
And this is one thing that I don't have a ton of experience in. Like I would say my development experience has never been super organized, especially in like documenting issues, for example. Like we
Yeah,
got into a workflow at FedEx where we were doing branches and PRs and things like that, but it wasn't super formal most of the time. And I would say we could use could have used a lot more structure. And
Mm.
that's where I think a lot of people have much more experience in that case or in that scenario than I do.
Yeah, that's one thing Nick kind of whipped us into shape with was how we were handling our issues and our pull request, and even some of our pre-commit and post build stuff.
Hmm.
So the template for the common template you'll see for our issues is you'll get a goal for what it should accomplish. You'll get a reason for why we want to accomplish that. If there's any tips that
Yep.
person can give, like maybe they've touched that part of the code base before, they can say, hey,
Start
this is
here.
going to happen. Yeah,
Yeah.
this is going to happen if you do this. We'll look out for this. But then you also get uh, a definition of done checklist. So we try to, especially if it's going to be junior developers who maybe haven't worked on open source or anything like that before, we try to give them a list of like, um, you can consider this done if A happens, B happens, C happens, and on down the line. So we try to we try to structure our issues to where you have every
Support
bit of
and
context you can
yeah,
have.
and clarity. Yeah, definitely. I think
Mhm.
that's great. And that's where I almost feel like I like need to be in that environment for a while to get more used to it because I just haven't really. Question from SN3T work. I don't know how you pronounce that. Something that's maybe important for junior devs is putting their work out there and also asking for feedback and help. Also engages potential employers. Yeah, I think we talked a little bit either before we started or like during this about imposter syndrome. When you're
Mhm.
new, especially, you just don't have any idea what it's like for other people, and you're just really nervous and you think that everyone knows so much more than, and it's just not true 99% of the time. But I think that's a great thing is I think that's one of the important things of building a community or immersing yourself in the community is finding people that you can trust to get feedback from so that you can help and help others, but then also get advice and feedback and kind of grow yourselves. And I'll give a little selfish of a shout out. If someone wants to run the Discord command in chat, it'll give you a link to the Learn, Build, Teach Discord. And I think we've done, from my perspective, a really good job of supporting people and being really open to people of all different experience levels. People ask questions, other people give respectful answers and point people to resources. That's the kind of engagement that for junior developers or people that are new to development or newer, that's the kind of thing that I would be looking to get support around me in terms of community. All right, two questions. One is getting into the tech. So that's going to be
Mhm.
I want to talk about that for a while. Let's answer one question from Debbie first. Have a friend that's listening who has almost finished a full stack tech degree with some great projects completed. Great. What would you advise
Mhm.
is the next step, especially seeing as how he doesn't have a few years of coding experience? And I can jump in
um,
first if you want to.
what would be the next step?
I think I assume just in like preparing for jobs, finding jobs, that sort of stuff. So you graduate or about to finish a degree somewhere, a boot camp, or maybe it's a formal degree or whatever it is, has a couple of
Mhm.
projects that are completed. And then what would be kind of the next steps of, I assume getting a job because of not having formal code programming experience on the job yet.
Yeah. For me, if I was in that position, I would a get my resume together, make sure it was up to date, and had all of those projects that they put together from the boot camp on there. Because that was one thing that hurt me for a long time is I was sending out a resume, but it was missing some like super important information about what I'd been up to within the last couple months. So that
Hmm.
would be my next step is making sure the resume is on point and getting that ready to send out because portfolios are cool, but hiring managers and recruiters are their your resume is their first glance at you.
Yeah. And the resume is your way into the door. Like after people get into the door for an interview, it's all about what you know and your experience and how you do in that interview. But you have to have a good entry point to be able to get to that point. So your resume is huge. Sounds like you've got some portfolio projects to talk about. Those are incredibly important, but you also have to be able to sell those on your resume. And those have to reflect technologies that you use, the skills that you use to build it. So I think you need to make sure that your resume aligns with that project or projects and really sells it as like this is what I accomplished and these are the things that I'm pretty good with. I would look at what are the types of jobs that you want to do. Do you want to do front end? Do you want to do back end? Do you just want to start getting paid? That's fine too. If you know, like I want to do X, find people that do X and ask them about their job, what they do on a day to day. Ask them about their skills. Ask them, hey, I know this, this, and this. What would you recommend that I look at learning next? You can also do research for like if you're applying for certain jobs now, what do those jobs look for? I think you mentioned you were looking for jobs and you saw much more React than Vue. Well, that's a good reason to go and build something in React and learn React. If it changes and now all of a sudden it's Vue or it's whatever the next thing is, now you start learning that thing to make sure that you're as hireable for that company as possible. So it's a process to get that first job. It is, but there's lots of things that you can just stay really active in making sure you're up to date on technology, that you're building, continuing to learn, continuing to build projects for your resume, and continuing to tweak your resume, because your resume might be 80% different depending on the job that you're applying for. I'm making up a number, but like it should be very tailored for that job to make sure that you don't miss out on the keywords that if you don't have, they will overlook and you won't even get seen. So a lot of tweaking that can go into that too. All right. So just the tech. What all do you have in protege.dev? The question about CI/CD and pipelines and testing. I don't know if you have all those things or not, but just tell us all about it. What all's involved?
So at the base level, it's create React app with a Firebase backend, and that's you could rebuild this with just those two things if you wanted to. We have Cypress for end-to-end testing.
Cool.
We're using Formic and Yup for form validation and
Okay.
some error handling.
And Formic that's like a pretty common React Forms API. Cool. I thought I'd heard it. I might have even used it at one point. But that's a pretty popular one, I think.
Yeah, I'd actually never heard
Okay.
of it. So Andy had built the form, and this was while I was still streaming it. I was streaming, adding in validation after Andy had put the form flow together,
Mm-hmm.
and
Some
a guy that was in my chat and is now he's actually now a pretty good friend that he
awesome.
streams some stuff as well.
Yeah.
But he kind of like he pretty much taught me Formic on my stream as I was building it into the platform.
Yeah.
He's like, "Oh, just use Formic." I was like, "I don't know what that is," and then he just kind of walked me through it. So that was pretty fun.
I've been
And
in
then
that
we have
situation a lot, by the way. Like streaming, having people in your stream can be so helpful.
yeah, we don't have a whole lot of build process stuff. We have some Husky pre-commit stuff for linting. We're using
Mm.
ESLint and Prettier for code formatting. And that's largely it. We have a pre-build task that generates the contributors list.
Hmm.
So rather than having to
Yeah.
hit the GitHub API, we just put it in a list, and Nick actually put that together for us.
I
Yeah,
think you,
there's really not much to it, to be honest.
well, and so a different perspective, like you say, there's not much to it. There's several things that
Uh,
I don't really have much experience with. I don't have much experience with automated testing. I've
mhm.
never done a pre-commit hook. I've never done a pre-build hook. Like this is, I feel like you should take off junior from your title and just be a developer is I
Well,
guess what I'm getting to.
the pre-commit stuff was well, a lot of that was Nick.
Hmm.
Like I said, everything was pretty much manual from A to
Yeah.
Z, and then Nick came in and was like, "Hey, we can add this, we can do
Yeah.
this, we can do this," and we me and Andy we'd never considered adding someone to the team, but Nick came in and he was on fire with getting some issues up for us. Like he was posting issues and then tagging them for other people to work on. He was putting in PRs to improve our build process. So I sent him a message on Slack one day. We're in a virtual coffee
Oh, cool.
group together. We talked about that earlier. It's a virtualcoffee.io. It's bi-weekly meetups.
If
So I
you,
just shot him a message in there, and I was like, "That's it."
oh,
I just
cool.
said, "Hey, dude," I said, "Hey, you're killing it. If you want to come on and have and have a little more impact than what you can from outside, go for it." And he was like, "Absolutely."
Yeah, that's great. And so I think the takeaway though, like even though he may have initiated that stuff, like if you had a new project, would you be able to set some of that stuff up yourself?
I would be able to look at this one and copy and paste it.
Yeah. And would you like copying and pasting is not a bad thing if
Mm,
you understand what you're copying and pasting. And I think like you're
yeah.
able to explain how the stuff works, and that's the value. Like
Hmm.
I don't expect if for you to come into a job and for you to write that from scratch. Like I'm going to copy and paste a ton of stuff, but I understand what
Yeah.
I'm copying and pasting, and it sounds like you've got that understanding. So that's super valuable.
Yeah. And I want to touch on Virtual Coffee one more time. That's a virtual coffee group ran by Becca Hara Weigel and Sarah McCombs. They kind of co-founded it together. Becca put it together at the beginning of COVID. Um, so it's really just a network of developers that are. It started out as, I think it originally started out as, hey, let's meet a couple times and talk about what we're doing to help our chances of getting hired or what we're doing
Hmm.
to try to get hired. And it's really turned into just like a full-blown support group. Like I have two kids and there's a parenting channel I'm always asking questions in, or I've posted in there for code help. They do like weekly, or not weekly, they do brown bag events where someone will give a talk, or they have uh, office hours. It's a great community to be in.
I think so. The link is in the chat. People should check it out. I've got it open, and I'm
Mm.
gonna see if I can register and come hang out with you one of these times coming up.
Yeah, we've had there's a bunch of awesome people in there, and there it's various skill levels. So you can
Yeah.
come in as a junior and have access to like some really senior guys and get some good feedback. And everyone's super friendly. Everyone's super helpful.
Hmm. Perfect.
I think I know Gant Laborde from Infinite Red's in there. He's
Oh
all the
yeah.
time posting in the Slack.
Cool.
Um,
I've got a DM in Discord from him that I haven't checked yet. So if again, if you're listening, I will get to it soon.
yeah, I
uh,
know Gant's in there. That's where I met Nick and how he ended up coming onto the Protege team.
cool.
And even I know TK Schillens. He's from there. He's super rad, dude.
Nice. That's awesome.
Everyone in that group super rad.
Yeah. Cool. I'll try to make one of the next ones coming up. Got a comment, a question from Swarlow. Been working as a developer for a bit over a year. The company is asking him to define the standards and workflow, as well as supervising other devs on the team, although he's getting the same salary. How would you, what would be your take on that? And mine is always like, when you think you deserve more, make a case and document that. Like
Mm,
every small win that you have, every leadership thing, and defining standards and over or supervising other devs is leadership, and that shows senior capabilities. So I don't know your company very well, but I think you have to go in to a manager and say, hey, like I'm doing these things that show leadership skills, that show that I'm able to make good decisions for us as a dev team. We're doing well. I would like to talk about what it's going to take for me to, I don't know if you're asking about a promotion, but what would it take for me to get to the next level? And I think that I'm
mm,
showing that. And if you come in and have kind of a matter of fact conversation, say, these are the things I'm doing, and this is why, based on their response, then you decide whether or not that's a company that you want to stay at. And if it's not, like if there's no room to move up, then you start looking and take your skills somewhere else. And I'm not saying jump ship if they just
mm.
say no, you're not getting a thing today. But if they're not receptive and having the conversation with you to tell you what they expect for you to get to the next level, that's not a good place to be. They should be having that conversation and that mentorship conversation to say, you're doing really well, I appreciate those things, we still expect maybe this thing to get to that next level, so let's talk about how you can get there, and then we'll get you there sometime soon. And if those conversations don't happen, then you start looking at other places.
Yeah, I would agree. If they're, I know with the company I'm with, we have every other week we have I have a one-on-one with my boss.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're in a company where there's something similar to that, maybe you can just bring it up at your next one-on-one.
Yeah.
If there's not something like that, like he said, make a case, maybe put it in an email or jump onto a call with them
Yeah.
and explain it all.
Yeah, definitely. Question.
Oh,
Well, go
hang on.
ahead.
Sorry,
Yeah.
sorry.
Go ahead.
One more thing I want to touch on with virtual coffee real quick is, so they have two meetups every week, and they do that to account for the East and the West Coast people. So Tuesdays it's 9 a.m. Eastern Standard, I guess
Mm-hmm.
Eastern Daylight right now,
Yeah.
and then on Thursdays it's 12 Eastern.
Sweet.
So if you're West Coast and you still want to make one, you don't have to wake up I don't have the hours to get there.
Fair enough. That's a good point. Um, I was gonna say, I think Tracy commented this, or I don't know. I guess is it Jane? Is your first name? Is that what you go by? Because I see Jane Tracy a lot. She was referencing her commit on here and how good it made her feel, and she's on the contributors page, and she was a name I recognized
Oh yeah,
when I was looking on there. So
yeah,
that's
yeah.
really cool. Um,
No,
Willie,
Tracy's awesome. I'm excited to see what else she gives us in the future.
yeah, she's been I think in several of the streams, and I've appreciated you being here and having questions and comments and stuff. And I follow the things that you post on Twitter and everything too. So comment or question from Willie Cole. Can you suggest a good way for junior dev that's still learning to decide what stack to pursue? How do we know which tools go best together in our tool belt? If you're new, pick a stack and run with it. It probably doesn't matter that much. The alternate answer to that is if you're able to do research into what jobs are looking for and you find that React is more popular than Vue, do that. If you find that Java is more popular than JavaScript, do that. Other than that, pick a stack, run with it, learn, and focus on the concepts, and it'll apply to whatever other frameworks people use. My perspective.
Yeah, I would largely agree with that too. What I did, um, I started in React because I saw that a lot, and then I picked up Tailwind CSS
Nice.
and did I love Tailwind.
Is that what you're using for Protege?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Sweet.
Yeah, so it's create React app, Firebase backend, Tailwind for styling.
Yeah. Nice.
And it's super awesome. It's made it only looks as good as it does because I had Tailwind to help me do it. But yeah, so like I knew I come from a design background, so I knew that working on the front end where I could have like some visual feedback to what I was building would be available. So that's why I picked front end, and then I grabbed a Tailwind because it allowed me to build the components I wanted to build without having to fight the CSS while trying to build it. Um, which maybe that just means I'm lazy with my CSS, or maybe I just didn't have enough experience with it. But it made it simple enough to where I could still build the stuff I wanted
At
and
the end of the day,
not have to fight it.
yeah, it's getting something done. And the only caveat I might have is I'm a big believer in like having a core understanding of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. For me,
Mm-hmm.
before frameworks, I think is important. Then you're just being productive, right? But I think
Mm-hmm.
it is important to have the understanding of how those things work because I got on too early into like Bootstrap, and when things didn't do what I thought they should, I didn't know how to fix it because I didn't really know CSS. I didn't have a solid
Yeah.
foundation there. Same thing with frameworks versus JavaScript. So different people have different perspectives. My perspective is build those, like spend time with those individually, learn them decently, build a core, and then go out and be
Mm-hmm.
productive and use whatever tools make the most sense. In this case, Tailwind.
Yeah. And to that note, I told you before we went live that I was terrified of frameworks, libraries, and pretty much anything npm when I
Yeah,
first got started out. So
fair
it,
enough.
it was all vanilla HTML, JavaScript, and
Yeah.
CSS, and even my current portfolio site is just straight CSS.
Do you want
So
to do you want to throw that in the
I
chat?
oh yeah, it's drewclem.com. I think what did I build this with? Gatsby, I think. I forget. I haven't touched it in a while.
Yeah.
But yeah, I did make sure that I had all those. Well, I made sure I had
Hmm.
the core fundamentals down. Probably, but because I was scared of everything else. I thought anytime I saw another word like I knew JavaScript, and I thought React was like a completely different language I would have to learn all over again,
Yeah.
separate from JavaScript. So I was like, I don't want to do that.
Right.
I thought the same thing about Vue. I thought the same thing about Ember. I thought every time I saw a new word, it was a completely different language that
Hmm.
I would have to learn from the ground up. I thought NPM was some weird like binary thing I would have to learn. So like
Yeah.
I just didn't touch it for like the first 14 months I was trying to code.
I get it. And I hope that I don't think you are taking it personally. If you do, I apologize. Like when I'm
Oh
laughing,
no 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 no.
it's not because I'm laughing in an insulting way. It's kind of a humorous interpretation, but that's a very real experience. And I had the same thing for me in college. People were talking about hackathons and how they were going to a hackathon in Nashville, which is where I went to school. And I was like, I don't know how to
Mhm.
hack into somebody's computer. Why would I do that? Turns out hackathons are one of the most amazing experiences and learning opportunities that you can do. But I didn't know and I was scared of it and I didn't because of that. So my laughing is not
Mhm.
like insulting. I hope you don't take it that way. It is humorous, but I hope that other people can relate to that experience, because when you don't know, you just don't know. And that just kind of is eye opening of how big the world of development is, especially in web development. And
Hmm.
it's a slow thing, right? Like you kind of add on one piece at a time. And for me, I hear about, like, I heard about React for 2 years before I did it. I heard about GraphQL. I heard about Gatsby. I heard about Next.js for like 2 years before I actually got into it. And I was a little bit scared too. Like I was like, oh, I can't do like another thing. And then you get into it and you spend some time with it, and it starts to make sense. So
Yeah.
a couple of people are commenting really good things about VC, virtual coffee. It took me a second. I was reading those comments and I was like, VC. So virtual coffee, got it. TK Shillings heading out. Thanks for the stream. And he says he will see you. I assume I got to stop doing that. They say that they will see you at virtual coffee. So maybe I'll get to see you
Yep.
there as well. Tanner is saying hello, is at breakfast right now, but wanted to tune in. What's up, Tanner? And let's get down to Slimeball. Says, how much JavaScript do you need to know to apply for a job? I feel like I don't know what I'm doing.
Neither do I.
And all of that is super relative. Slimeball went on to say, well versed in HTML, CSS, Sass, and Bootstrap. I don't know how much JavaScript I should know. I would say make that, like, that's probably your biggest gap right now. If you know HTML and CSS pretty well, now really spend some time focusing on the JavaScript side. Do JavaScript 30 on from Wes Boss. That's a great
Mhm.
thing to go through and really build just core JavaScript skills. I did that early on. JavaScript, understanding the weird parts on Udemy is a great course for understanding like the weird parts of JavaScript and how it works behind the scenes, and just build some simple apps, or not necessarily build whatever simple means for you. Build something in JavaScript and build multiple things in JavaScript just to get that repetitiveness and to figure out the things that you don't know. Because once you start to build something, and maybe you could speak to this with Protege, you're like, oh, I just want to do this thing. It should be simple. You're like, oh, it's not as simple as I thought. Now I have to learn this whole new concept or tool or whatever it
Mhm.
is to accomplish this goal.
Yeah, I did. I, first of all, I did the West Boss JavaScript 30. That is a great course. The first thing I built with JavaScript was a mobile menu for. I
Mm-hmm.
was building portfolios, so you press the hamburger button, it opens the menu, and then it
Mm-hmm.
closes it. That was the first thing I built, and just from building that, it wasn't even that extravagant of a function, but just that gave me like I built that and I was like, oh, that's how this works. And
Mm-hmm.
from there, I was able to take that and just kind of snowball into building the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. The thing I built on Protege that ended up being way more complicated than I thought it would be where is it? Hang on, I got the code base open here.
And while you're digging that up, I'm gonna grab a link to a video that I put out Tuesday, which is my 5 biggest pieces of advice for
Mhm.
aspiring developers. And you'll probably hear that a lot of the stuff that's in this video is stuff that you've heard me talk about today. But if you want kind of a recap of just my general advice for people that are looking, I'll send you a link to this video in the chat.
Yeah, so the thing that was way more complicated than I expected it to be on Protege was um, getting the data needed for the job board before the component rendered. I'd never done that in React. I was like, it can't be that hard. I just
Mm,
there I go with the just again.
yeah, there you go.
I just tell Firebase to do the thing and it gives it to me. But it turns
Yeah.
out that I needed to use effect and I needed to use
Hmm.
async await in parts of it. And what I thought was going to be a quick just do this and it's there turned into that part was actually on stream too. That ended up being like a couple hours just because I'd never
Yeah.
touched any of that stuff before.
And you go down that rabbit hole of use effect and use state and just hooks in general, that's a rabbit hole. But now,
Mhm.
after you forced yourself to figure out what you needed, now you can reference those things and use them in the future. And
Yep.
that's just how it is. Like the more you build stuff, the more you learn. Someone double down, building is the best way to learn. Absolutely agree. Comment
Yep.
from Slimeball about thanks for the feedback on JavaScript. Would going through free code camp JavaScript be helpful as well? Absolutely, yeah. And that's
Mhm.
probably I don't if you really don't have much experience at all with JavaScript, start there and do everything that they have JavaScript wise. Then move on to JavaScript 30, which is a little bit more advanced. Still for people with I don't know how he phrases it. Like you should probably have a little bit of experience before doing that, although not much. And anyway, that would be a good progression, I think. So
Yeah, that's what I used for my benchmark of when I was ready to go into frameworks. I wouldn't let me touch any framework until I'd finished Freed Code Camp's
mm,
JavaScript section.
yeah, I love that.
And it took me a while to finish it because I was new to JavaScript, learning it as I went. But once I got to the end of it, I was like, okay, now I can try this stuff.
Absolutely. Someone
Which
commented, Deborah did, that they like your portfolio, which I
thank you,
am actually looking at as well. It looks great. Like I love it as well.
thank you. I'm
And
actually
this
in the
is
process of slowly rebuilding it. Um, I'm not changing the design. I'm just rebuilding it in Nuxt just for fun.
oh cool, nice. If Debbie is still here, she will be very excited to hear that. And this is, I would say, this is not a junior developer portfolio page. So
It's
I'm gonna
not.
I'm gonna keep poking you until it goes away. Let's see.
That may take a while.
That's fine. I'm persistent enough, I think.
I did at some point. I had aspiring on everything for the longest time.
hmm
I was in aspiring developer,
Yeah.
aspiring this, aspiring that. I finally took that off
Yep.
about a year and a half ago.
Yeah. I think that's another one, exactly the same thing. Junior, aspiring, whatever phrase you want to go with, that just implies that you aren't a real developer. Most of the time you are. So
Hmm. I see
um
I see Travis hanging out in chat. I just gotta throw this up there for him. I don't know if you can see it.
what is that?
That's the developer.io shirt, world's okayest
Oh,
developer.
okay. Yeah, yeah. Very cool. World's okayest
That's
developer. I like it.
that's Travis's side project. This shirt is super comfy.
And what's the name of that site?
It's developer.io, no vowels.
Okay.
DVLPR, I think.
Yeah. Have I seen that before? By the way, what's up, Travis? Oh, you got, ooh. You know, I've really been wanting a hat recently. This might be the hat I go for.
Do it. So if you want a
Um,
super comfy T-shirt, grab one of those too. I
yeah,
wear this thing like 3 times a week.
that's cool. I really might buy one of these hats, especially. I'm gonna throw a link to this in the chat as well. Deborah maybe is saying that she is an aspire, like she has aspiring on her Twitter. Maybe is what you're saying,
Mhm.
and you can update that or not. It's up to you.
Yeah.
Whatever you think makes the most sense for you. There's
Deborah,
one.
Deborah, if you've built anything, take it off.
You are a developer.
Yeah.
The one comment I hadn't read before from Jack Dempsey: as a supervisor of a data group, programming isn't as important as the candidate's desire to learn and tinker on their own.
Mm.
Natural curiosity can't be taught. I'm a big advocate of the same thing. When I was looking at who I would want to hire in interviews and looking at resumes and stuff, I want to, it's not all about what you know now. It's about your capacity to learn and your interest in learning, because we live in a
Mm.
world where things change overnight on the technology side. And you have to have people that are going to push you forward. And I think a big problem that we had at FedEx is we had, honestly, an older generation. I don't necessarily mean just older in age, I mean older in mentality, where a lot of people that we're going to keep using the same thing we've been using, and they don't really need to learn anything more. And I think you saw when we started to bring in newer developers like Aaron, who's in the chat here, and Lawrence, who may still be in the chat. When you bring in these new people who are excited to learn and have the capacity to go out and try new things and really come up with creative ideas to solutions, that's when you start to, especially at FedEx, you start to see like, all right, we're starting to pick up some momentum, things that we didn't have before. And it's a game changer. Like that to me is probably one of the most important things, is your capacity and desire to learn and evolve.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can even, if you scroll down on the Protege homepage, one of our slogans is broadcast to unmatched ambition. And that's one of the recurring conversations me and Andy find ourselves having all the time, is that these companies are missing out on so much talent because they want X amount of years experience. And we're
Mm-hmm.
we're not naive. We know there there are some cases where, you know, maybe a senior dev left, so they do need someone they can just drop in that can pick up the ball and keep
Hmm.
running. But the junior developer pool is so full of people that are just so hungry and ambitious to a get in anywhere and start doing meaningful work, but to
Yeah.
also grow whatever they have to be able
Yeah.
to be impactful in that role. And that's really that's I think I said this earlier. What one of the things we want to do is we don't want to just be a job board. We want to be a job board that champions the candidates we're trying to get hired. That's why we're open source. That's why we have the contributors
Yeah.
page. So if a company comes here, they can see, okay, not only are the candidates applying to these roles, but they're also they're helping build the platform they're applying from
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So ambition and willingness to learn and grow,
And
that will get you so far.
yeah. And RUCS in chat is saying, as someone who's worked a few build weeks, I'm not sure what a build week is in a boot camp, but soft skills showing up in effort puts you ahead of 80% of the pool. I would say, yeah, that's probably true. I've got to call it in for myself in like 5 minutes. I've got to talk in 45 minutes that I've got to give. Which I wonder if it's going to be about kind of my career and the ups and downs of my career. I wonder if people are interested. Let me grab you a link and you can come join me for that in 45 minutes. But um, the last one that we'll do here from Slimeball, what are your thoughts on using self-taught developer? I've seen a few posts on Twitter saying it's not good to say that either. I'm kind of curious. Do you have any like big opinions either way on that?
I would say do it, because that shows that you're you're able and also willing to put in the work yourself without someone having to push you or do it for you. So I would absolutely say use it. Anytime I've interviewed for a position, I've said I'm self taught. I knew nothing, and what I know what I know I've either taught myself or,
Mm-hmm.
you know, net connections and friends have taught me along the way.
Yeah, I think I'm right there with you. I mean, I can't imagine seeing like I'm more impressed. Actually, I'm definitely more impressed to see someone's a self-taught developer because
Mhm.
I just again I think about like people jump for the degree so easily in hiring, and I think about like how many more people I've seen that are self-taught or went through a boot camp that are way more prepared for a job than I was
Mhm.
looking for a job. So the degree doesn't mean what it used to. Like I approached my degree in computer science as like, I'm going to school, right? So I was trying to get good grades and I was doing those things, but that's not what it's all about. I wasn't as prepared
Mhm.
as a lot of these people are. And if you're self-taught, you obviously have passion for it and you want to learn and you have the capacity to learn. And now you're just going to be in a situation where hopefully you've got resources around you to help you do that and then continue to grow and contribute and just be a developer. So yeah, I don't look down on that at all. I have more respect for that. And especially it's not going to prevent you from getting an interview, and then it's all about how you do in the interview. Like if you interview better than someone who went through a boot camp or went to a degree, that's what matters. Like the interview and how you do there is that's what's important. If
Absolutely.
yeah, if people want the link to this talk that I'm giving in 45 minutes, there it is in the chat. And I think that's it. This has been a lot of fun for me. I love these conversations, especially people that are building cool products, people that are doing stuff that benefits the community, which obviously you're kind of nailing both of those categories. So this is a lot of fun. Thanks everyone for hanging out in the chat. I think the chat has been great. So I appreciate all of that. And I don't know if I've scheduled a guest for next week, but stick around. Usually these are 11 a.m. Central on Fridays. And then I will be on the Auth0 channel on Thursdays at 2 p.m. Central. Usually those are just kind of hacking around. So anyway, check out the Auth0 channel if you haven't, AUTH0 on Twitch and YouTube. And I hope to see you there. Hope to see you next week. And anyway, Drew, thanks again for coming on, man. I appreciate talking to you and getting to know you a little bit about the project.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was a blast.
Sweet. And I'm going to raid over to my friend Chow Codes, who is streaming. So we'll take you all over there in 7 seconds or so. So one last thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. All the comments, all the questions, the conversation, the advice is great. I think lots of people hopefully got some benefit out of this, and I will catch you next time. See ya.
Awesome.
see, I think that raid finished, and then I will